When we think assault rifle, we think good damage, long range, and accuracy. While each gun we're going to talk about today varies in each of these categories, there's one thing that keeps them all in check. What's going on, guys? It's Valued, and if you've just been picking up the R301 by default every single game, then let me tell you, we gotta have a chat. Because some of the other AR options are straight up OP if you know how to use them, and by the end of this video, you will. Before we talk about the options though, I have a few tips that you guys need to keep in mind while using any kind of assault rifle. The biggest thing to remember is that ARs have their strafe speed straight up cut in half while ADSing. And this is a huge deal when you're taking fights at closer ranges, as strafing during fights is the #1 way to avoid damage and stay on the move. Having it cut so much while aiming means you need to be smart about how you take fights. If you get caught up close by a Volt, they may just one-clip you since it's so easy for them to hit shots when you're ADSing. This is a big reason why these weapons tend to be your long-range options, allowing you to peek long angles, have accurate shots, and then duck back into cover for reloading or healing. While some of the weapons we're going to talk about, quite honestly, are just going to absolutely break the rules, it's important to keep this mindset when using these weapons. Because knowing the limitations and power of your gun is going to help you build better loadouts and be more lethal at all points in the game. Alright guys, starting off the assault rifles, let's talk about everybody's favorite, the R301 carbine. This weapon has been a staple since the game's release, and for good reason. It has the highest fire rate in its class, and it's actually one of the most accurate as well, being able to beam at long ranges. With low recoil, the only thing keeping this gun from being a laser beam is the bullet drop on the light ammo type. And keep in mind though, while you may be able to hit some long range shots with this guy, that light ammo is going to impact how much damage you can do at long ranges. I got a little hint for you guys, it's not that much. The exception to this rule is if you happen to get an anvil receiver, which can make the gun's damage much better at long range. Even with this though, the gun really shines in mid-range combat, letting you have some of the most consistent damage of any of the weapons that we're going to talk about today. And between me and you, I even prefer not running an anvil receiver and just playing accordingly, as the receiver lowers your fire rate a ton for the damage trade-off. This thing is just so accurate if you slap a 2x or 3x HCOG on it, and the gun feels so good to use. Up close, it's not too bad having accurate hipfire and a solid fire rate, but keep in mind it doesn't have the highest raw damage output, so don't be surprised if you try to take close range fights and you're losing to people pulling out their R99 or Volt. And even though its hipfire is super accurate, if you don't one-clip the guy close to you, there's a good chance you're just gonna die. Plus, if you don't have a purple or even blue mag on, well, then don't miss any shots. The R301 is the staple assault rifle and should be seen as the all-around balanced option in most cases. However guys, some of the guns that we're going to talk about are even better than the carbine in their own way. Alright guys, the next gun on our list may not actually be an assault rifle, but man, does it feel like one. Even after recent nerfs, the Spitfire remains one of the best primary weapon options. And I know, this is an assault rifle guide, but trust me, this thing doesn't deserve to be grouped up with those other LMGs. Even though the devs try to take some power out of the gun, its clip size, good damage, and manageable recoil is just too good not to make this thing feel like a giant AR. While it doesn't have the raw accuracy at range that some of the other guns we're going to talk about today do, where it makes up for it is with its huge clip and massive damage output. Combine this weapon with decent hipfire accuracy and you can just hold on the trigger until the enemy squad is dead. Seriously though guys, in close range fights, especially before everyone has max evo shields, this thing is an absolute beast. The Spitfire has a ton of room for error, with its clip size being able to get all the way up to 50. You can afford to miss some shots and still down an enemy in one clip easily. But if you manage to hit most of your shots, a Spitfire with a purple clip can actually take down an entire squad without even needing to reload. Its lower fire rate, ergo, and lackluster recoil keeps it from taking over at long ranges, but in close to mid-range, there's no weapon more forgiving than the Spitfire. With all of this in mind, we just couldn't leave the Spitfire out of the AR conversation. And guys, just because it looks like an LMG doesn't mean we all don't know better. Hopping from one heavy weapon to the next, we have got to talk about what might be the best flex weapon in the game, the Flatline. This gun has great damage, good range, and a solid hipfire. And while it can be one of the weirder recoil patterns to get used to, if you consistently hit your shots, the Flatline is one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Not only does it have the range of the R301 and the damage of the Spitfire, but it also has one of the tightest hipfires in its class. The gun is kept in check due to its lower clip size and its inability to have a stabilizer attached, but even with these handicaps, it's still a menace. And the biggest reason that I like this gun is how flexible it is. You can easily win close range gunfights against SMGs if you get good at abusing the hipfire. And you can still compete at long ranges versus other ARs. And this is what I mean by a flex weapon, as it's able to be used as a close range option and a long range option. So say I had a fully kitted carbine, but don't have anything solid for a close range yet. If I come across a Flatline and have a purple or blue mag, suddenly I have one of the most powerful close range weapons that can also flex to fight at longer ranges if needed. Plus, I don't need to worry about having the right weapon in hand as much because the Flatline does good at both ranges. And this also goes the other way. If you have a Flatline as your main weapon and you come across a sniper you want to run or a bow check, you can use the Flatline as your flex weapon, covering the weaknesses of both those weapons all on its own. Whether you want to throw a 1x on this thing and use it at close range, or get that 2x or 3x in an Anvo receiver and start destroying teams at longer ranges, this gun can do it all. Keep in mind, guys, if you are trying to use it up close, that it is an AR, so don't get yourself caught with 50% strafe speed trying to ADS. All this weapon needs to be incredibly powerful is a heavy mag and a sight you're comfortable with. While the lack of attachment slots may turn you off at first, you're going to come to love this gun because you won't have to waste all that time finding loot for your gun. And guys, if you want to learn more about the other flex weapons or tips to be an incredible AR player, our pro coaches over at ProGuides.com have got you covered. As some of the top ranked players in the world, they have everything that you need to know to push your game to the next level. The link will be in the description. And back to the ARs, the last weapon we're going to talk about is the only energy weapon on this roster, the Havoc. While this guy hasn't been in the limelight much since its release, it's quietly become one of the strongest energy weapons in the game. Energy ammo in an AR is actually kind of OP. The bullets have less drop-off than other classes, making it much easier to hit shots at range. The Havoc has a pretty solid hipfire rate and good damage, so you would expect everyone to be running it, right? Wrong. The gun's windup is the main reason for this, making peeking angles with the gun very dangerous to do as you have to wait on the windup time. But okay, let's say we have a turbocharger to get rid of that. Well, this gun has some pretty serious recoil that can be hard to control. If you have a turbocharger and you're hitting basically every shot, there isn't a stronger AR option in the game. However, this recoil is always going to impact you in-game, and there may be a lot of games where you don't come across that all-powerful turbocharger. Having to rely on an incredibly rare hop-up just to make your primary weapon good is a recipe for disaster, and it's going to lead to a lot of frustration as you lose fights not being as strong as you could be. But if you do come across an early turbocharger and you have a Havoc in your eyes, you should definitely give it a go. Keep in mind though, guys, this gun takes a good amount of practice to use like the pros. Alright guys, now that we've talked about the strongest options for assault rifles, and a particular honorable mention assault rifle, Spitfire, it's time to explain when you should go for some of these weapons. Like we mentioned, the Flatline is great every single time. If you see it and your team isn't running triple heavy ammo, you should definitely pick it up. But a gun like the Havoc should only be run in a couple of situations. Situation 1, you have the perfect attachments to make this thing insanely strong. And yes, I mean the turbocharger. But the second situation is you only have one player on your team using energy ammo because of how rare it is. Situations like this arise for each of the weapons. So to explain it in a nutshell, the R301, Spitfire, and Flatline are great options almost every time. The only thing you need to keep in mind is your secondary. If you have a shotgun secondary, the R301 is great because its only weakness is close range. But if you have a Spitfire, you should really only be running a shotgun or sniper to cover some of its weaknesses and allow yourself to have room for all the ammo you're gonna need. This is an example of one of the limitations one of these guns can bring. And things like this are very important to understand and key to pay attention to if you're trying to improve at the game. These weapons all have their strengths and weaknesses, and now that you know which situations each of these weapons is strong in, you're golden. If you take the time to learn exactly how to use each of these weapons, you're going to find yourself picking up way more Flatlines and also winning more games. I know, a little weird, right? Anyway guys, let us know in the comments below what kind of weapons you've been trying out, and as always, my name has been Valued, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.